Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. Okay. I'd like to welcome Jo Boaler. Jo, thank you so much for being here on Blue Glasses Math. I'm having one of those Oprah Winfrey moments where I can't believe that I'm here having you all to myself to have a conversation about math.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, awesome. Wonderful. All right, well, so we're going to start the way I do with all of my episodes is every guest that I talk to, I'm always so curious about what is your math story? What brought Jo Boaler to this space and time?
What is my math story? Well, actually, I think you're right that this really does impact you sort of long term. And my math story was maths. I grew up in England. Maths classes were pretty boring. I would sit, the teacher would put questions and methods up on the board, we would copy them, we would do short questions. I actually got into a game with one of my teachers because she would spend like the first 20 minutes of class standing at the board, just listing question after question after question, like 100 questions. And my goal was always to finish them before she turned around, which was really annoying. Annoying to her.
It annoyed her. Oh, that's interesting.
But anyways... So I didn't plan to do anything with maths. I went into doing A-levels, which you do when you're older. It's more sort of advanced level. And I was going to go into science, and you have to do maths. So took maths A-level. That was when I had an amazingly different teacher. And she was different in that she had us sit in groups, which I'd never done before. And she would get us to talk about the questions. It was sort of like calculus-y sort of things. And we would discuss what method to use and why, and it just changed maths dramatically for me. And really from that moment on, I got interested. I started to see things mathematically that I hadn't seen before. And so definitely I think my experience in school. And then I often was in a position of helping my friends. Not with that teacher, but with previous teachers, they would often say, I don't understand. And the teachers just weren't very good at helping. I really noticed that, and I would sit and help my friends, and I think that probably was the spark of mathematics education in me.
So even as a student, you were teaching, basically. You were teaching for your friends.
And enjoying it and thinking about it, and yeah.
And how old were you when you had that sort of shift in perspective?
I was 17.
You were 17. So it took until you were 17 for a teacher to put you in groups.
Yes.
And did you think it was the groups?
To do something interesting.
Yeah. It was the interest. Yes, exactly. So do you think it was the tasks that the teacher gave you, or the grouping, or
I mean,
both?
it was a lot just having questions to do with others, where you would talk to each other and discuss why you wanted to use a method and why it worked. I think it was more that. I don't think she brought in radically different tasks, but she would give us these questions to think and talk about in groups before she sort of taught formal things to us. And
interesting.
Yeah, that was just I found that really helpful and interesting.
So this actually leads right into your latest book. I have all your books. They're sitting behind me on the shelf.
Yay.
The one that I want to talk about today is The Mathist. As you can see, it's got lots of Post-it notes. I've been doing my homework before this conversation. And really, I've got another Post-it note here. First of all, you've been a huge inspiration to me. I know I said this like before we even started.
I really appreciate it.
I mean, your idea of math mindsets, and the a lot of people who are listening to this episode probably already have a feeling of your work. Something that's really impacted me has been, and then the work that I did as a teacher, and then as a coach, I coach teachers. is giving students the opportunity. Well, two things. First thing, I want to talk about the title. Let's start here. All right. And then I'll get to the other piece. So math-ish. So when I first saw math-ish, I'm like, what does math-ish mean? And of course, just like how you said a minute ago, your teacher might have given you some problems to knock around with your friends before, and your classmates before she taught the formal method. I started knocking around this idea of what's a math-ish in my mind. But you talk about two things. There's two terms that you introduced in this book that I had not heard before. The first one is math-ish, the title of the book. And the other one is math diversity, or mathematical diversity. Is it math? Yeah. And so I want to talk about both of those things because as you're talking about your experience with those other students where you had a chance to have conversations with them, I'm assuming some different ideas came up. So anyway, I'll stop talking for a second. Math-ish, math diversity.
Well, math-ish is a term I brought into the book as I started to realize how important it was that kids think sort of ishly before they get into a calculation. And there's a lot of research that tells us that kids estimating is really important. But I know from teaching and from being with teachers that kids hate to estimate, and often they'll do anything to avoid it. They'll calculate precisely and then work out the exact answer.
I did that all the time.
And I hear from teachers all the time, my kids don't have number sense. My kids will come up with wild answers. My kids, dive into calculations, dividing fractions, and they lose complete sense of the numbers. And so I thought, well, what about if before kids ever do a calculation, we ask them, what's your ish number? What is your ish answer? What is your intuition about it?
Yes.
And I know it's corny.
That's very corny, but it's fantastic.
And what happens is they have to engage with number sense. You cannot ish a number by, if you haven't got number sense. And ishing numbers helps with number sense. So I started to share this with teachers, and I have a website now called mathish.org, and there's a video on that website of kids being introduced to ish. And so some people say to me, of course, isn't ishing just estimation? And of course, that's exactly what it is. It is estimating. But as I said, kids often hate to estimate. I think they think it's just another procedure. But when you ask them, can you come up with an ish number? Something magical happens. And they're more free and more willing to share their thinking with you. So if you look at this video that's on the website, you'll see the teacher asking the kids, what's your ish number and what's your ish ratio? And, you can apply it to all sorts of things. And many, many kids are willing to share. They're all putting their hands up and saying, this is my ish number, because suddenly you've taken away the fear of, being precise and accurate and correct. And so I love that about it. I love that kids come up with their ish numbers is going to help with number sense, but I also love that it's bringing out the kids who are often fearful about maths. And that is the big feedback I'm hearing from teachers. This is like a game changer for the kids who are afraid. When I was in the classroom that day, we were filming, the principal was in the room, and she said to me afterwards, oh my gosh, those kids who are all raising their hand and sharing their ish numbers, they're the ones who are usually sent to my office. So,
yes.
So that's something I didn't know was going to happen, but I really love that about it.
That says something about ish numbers, right? I did watch the video before I popped on here, and there was one moment in the video where it was the camera zoomed in on one particular student, and she had something written on her whiteboard, and the teacher, I don't know if the student raised her hand or if the teacher just called on her, and the student said, well, I don't know, and the teacher said, well, what if you just try? And then she started
exactly the moment you mean.
And she was explaining, it brings tears to my eyes, because the way she started to open up, and the more the words came out of her mouth, the more she felt, she acted like she had real conviction about her idea. And I thought, wow, that was and I have nothing about that student or what happened before or what happened after, but
just a lovely moment of teaching, and I really honor the teacher in that moment that, the student said, I don't know how to explain it.
Yes.
And there was just a pause, And she said, why don't you just try? And then the student comes out with a beautiful explanation.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And I just thought, yeah, that's really a great moment of teaching there.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that in the show notes because, again, what I'm trying to get at in this podcast is to give teachers, math coaches, math administrators, anybody, even parents who help their kids at home with their homework about, how we're interacting with our students in these moments where they're like, well, I'm not sure. That teacher did not jump in and rescue the student. She held space for that. And all the students in the class seemed to follow suit. So, and I know there's cameras rolling and all of that, but it doesn't matter. It's like they're still giving that student who was hesitant an opportunity by just encouragement. So, yeah, I love that. Awesome. Okay. So as I'm looking through this book, I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to talk to Jo about? Because there's a lot in here that, there's so much to talk about, but let's just go based on what we were just talking about with this one student who was calling, I'm not sure. On page 90, which is the title of the chapter is Valuing Struggle. So This is page 90 on the book, and I'm going to read to you what you wrote.
Okay.
And it's a little long, but I'm sure you remember these words. This is about struggle. So as a society, you write, not only in our schools, we need to recalibrate our cultural fear of being wrong and struggling, as they are both times of great importance and value for the brain's development of knowledge and creativity. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but then you said, being comfortable with uncertainty, mistakes, and struggle allows adults to model being comfortable in these times and with other adults and learners, demonstrating that comfort is an important part of the process. So I read that sentence and I'm like, wait a minute. She's saying comfort is part of the process. What you're saying is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what I'm saying, yes.
And why is this so important? I mean, yeah, tell me more about this.
I definitely think we have multiple times in our lives, even outside of teaching, as a parent or as somebody who works with other adults, just to model how you deal with times of struggle, times of mistakes. They actually found that children's mindsets were pretty well formed by the time they were 3. And the reason what changed kids for whether they had the growth or a fixed mindset was how their parents reacted to mistakes. So it's hard when you're a parent.
Yes.
Maybe your child spills something over your precious work, some really important piece of work. I mean, it's hard to not be down on mistakes, but I really worked at it because I was reading all of this while my children were younger. Also in businesses, when people make mistakes, I have that happen in my own team, and you just have to really be positive and think about the good in them. And of course, in learning, mistakes are absolutely critical, and they are when your brain is in a really good space. So the reasons for teachers to be positive about mistakes are even more amplified. But sometimes we have to work on our own mindset, our own approach to mistakes, our own approach to our own times of struggle.
Yeah, a lot of times when I go into classrooms and work with teachers, what I'll notice is a student makes a mistake, and sometimes it's, my presence as a coach, I'm in there, and especially if I'm working with a teacher for early on, I try to express to them that anything goes and whatever happens in the classroom is okay. I notice, though, a lot of times, and this is, if a student makes a mistake, teacher is feeling like, oh, I need to go in and fix that, or right? And it's so interesting to see when we can pull back from that and say, okay, just like that teacher did in the video, the student wasn't making a mistake, but this teacher gave this space to encourage that student to express themselves in whatever way that meant, right? It didn't have to be perfect.
Right.
And I think this getting comfortable with, what I'm noticing is the teachers who jump on board and get comfortable with their own discomfort, that their students don't know how to solve the problem in that moment, is really something miraculous.
Right? And teachers don't know how to deal with mistakes often. And we're not trained to do that. And we've all been brought up in this culture of valuing correctness.
Yes. Yes.
So rarely are we trained to make mistakes, to handle mistakes or to value mistakes. So yeah, I teach teachers at Stanford, and I always teach them number talks, and I get them doing number talks with each other. This year I got them to do number talks with each other, like one of them's the teacher and the other's actors, students, and they switch around. And I told them they could only make mistakes in what they offered. So I was really trying to get them to train to, like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I deal with it?
Brilliant.
But yeah, I mean, when I teach young kids, when we do our summer camps, we celebrate mistakes. When kids make mistakes, we say, this is fantastic. This is your time of your brain growing and synapses firing. And we love mistakes. And that helps. That really helps students be more willing to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it's not their own mistake, maybe it's a classmate's mistake, then they start to see, oh, it's just like what you use the example of at home with children. If a child sees mom getting angry about the coffee spilling or whatever, then the other child's thinking, oh, I better not do that, even if it wasn't their own mistake. Same thing applies.
Yeah.
In the math
classroom. I better
classroom.
not be vulnerable and share my thinking, because what if it's wrong?
Yes.
And
yeah.
All of these things shut kids down.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we get on that.
Yeah, totally.
Mistakes, encouraging kids to struggle.
Yeah, and so I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. So how do we then convince a teacher? Let's just say we've got a teacher who's been teaching for, 5 to 7 years, and they're very like, this is the way things have to go, that everybody has to get it right, everybody's going to be finished by the end of the class period, all of the things. What advice would you give to help that teacher? Like, is there a process? I know every teacher's different, but I'm just kind of curious how you handle that. Because I know you go into schools as well, and as well as teaching at Stanford, so.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with teachers, and I don't know, I find the best way to shift teachers in their approach to maths is to have good quality time with them. I love our 2-day workshops at Stanford. I feel if people come for 2 days, we can really impact them. And I love to have teachers work on maths themselves in those workshops in a different way. Where, it's a different kind of maths. It's more visual, creative and lovely, but also where they get the opportunity to struggle and find things difficult. I think they have to really go through it themselves and experience it differently. I do believe in sharing with teachers the value of kids making mistakes and struggling, and how really we shouldn't have a goal that kids are getting everything right. That means their brain's not really getting a good workout. So I do a combination of things. When I work with teachers, I show them brain evidence, mindset evidence. I show them classrooms that have a mindset culture. We watch video. I immerse them in that kind of culture themselves.
Yeah.
And those different things. It's rarely with a teacher you really can just speak words and everything changes. No,
definitely not. And I agree, 100% agree with you of getting the teachers immersed in it, because then they get that feeling. You also say in that page, on page 90, it said, this often starts with working to eradicate negative self-talk. And I'm like, yes, eradicate negative self-talk about everything, right?
Yes.
And if we can get students in math class and teachers to eradicate negative self-talk about, my kids don't know their facts, or they don't solve word problems well, or whatever the complaint is.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, can we shift perspectives here on like what it actually means to think? Go ahead.
And about themselves. When we run teacher workshops, I hear teachers say things like, well, I'm only an elementary teacher, and I never let that pass.
Never.
And, just really negative things about themselves. And we gave them a problem to do in a workshop recently, and it was pretty difficult. It really got teachers struggling, and they were really in it. They wanted to know how to get forward, and I love that. And they were sharing, this was so hard, and it was such a struggle. And then I heard them just saying all these negative thoughts about themselves, and saying, it would be terrible in the classroom if I did this, if I didn't know, how to do it myself. And I just think what a terrible pressure that is people put on themselves, that they have to know everything that comes up in a classroom.
Yes.
That you can't use tasks that you're not sure what students will do with them in case you don't know it yourself. I mean, that's a unreal and unhelpful standard that teachers hold themselves to. And I always share, you don't have to know everything that a kid comes up with. I teach undergrads at Stanford, and we do these open problems, and they come up with all sorts of things that I've never thought of. And I just say, wow, that's so interesting. I never thought of that. Show me more. So I think that's part of it too, having teachers let go of feeling they need to be perfect and they can't make mistakes, and getting rid of their own negative self-talk about themselves, let alone, about teaching situations.
That's beautiful. I just recently had a conversation with Mike Flynn from, he used to be from Mount Holyoke, but he said, most of what I've learned in my career is from 7-year-olds because he taught second grade and when he was a teacher years ago, and the 7-year-olds have a lot to say about math. And so do you have time to get into a math question? Because I have a math question for us to think about. If you have time.
Depends what the question is.
All right, let's go. So I'll keep it short. But before we go there, I just lost my train of thought. This happens often. I leave my train of thought. Okay, so this is the problem. So this is not really, I'm not going to ask you a problem to do, but you talk about division of fractions.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So when we're talking about perfection and like not knowing, I go to endless classrooms where, I don't know, I can't share my screen here, but I'll put it in the show notes. Like right before we got on here, I Googled fraction division, and I actually put in the images, right? So I said fraction division images on Google, and I would say the screen is full with all flip and multiply, right? So there's like these arrows, and then arrows, and every single image.
Exactly.
And so, the question is, you talk about rethinking division of fractions. Let's say you said it at page 159. I have to get to it because you I won't go through the whole anecdote because I want people to buy this book and read it. But you're talking about the visual approaches to division. Of fractions.
Yeah, love them.
And the problem was in the book, I think it was 1 divided by 2/3. No, 2/3 divided. Yes, 1 divided by 2/3, right? When I first started reading this in the book, all right, so if you're a listener right now, you've got a Post-it note in front of you and you're writing 1 divided by 2/3, okay? I will tell you, Joe, what I first did in my mind was pictured the 1, pictured the division sign, and I coach teachers all the time, but my first inclination, the safest inclination was, I know that if I just flip that 2/3 into 3/2, 3/2 is 1.5.
Yeah, right.
But here, I'm just going to show this real quick. But then you talk about these 3 visual prompts, which I could hold this up for 10 minutes before people can get it. So maybe they want to pause the video
buy the book.
Looking at it. Buy the book, yeah. Pause the video now, then buy the book and put all the Post-it notes in it because you're going to learn so much from this book. So what is it about fraction division that gets people so aggravated?
Oh, well, fraction division. I mean, that is an example, really good example in maths of something we teach kids, where we teach kids a rule that they really cannot understand, that really has no meaning at all behind it.
Yeah. Because it comes up in like 6th grade. 6th grade is usually when it comes up. Yeah. Okay.
And I can tell you an interesting story. I teach an undergrad class in Stanford, and a few years ago I showed a video of a teacher called Kathy Humphreys doing 1 divided by 2/3 with her students and getting her students to do all these visual proofs of what that would be. And these undergrads were fascinated because none of them had thought of fraction division as something they could understand. They had all flipped and multiplied. And so they got into this really deep conversation about, how does it even work and how would we visualize? One of them, Mont Cordero, decided to do their undergraduate honors thesis on this topic, on division of fractions. Because they were just so fascinated, they couldn't let it go. They worked with a CS professor at Stanford, and they worked out what is happening in the algorithm, the flip and multiply algorithm. And what they found was, to understand that algorithm, you need mathematical understanding that is way above that grade level. That we introduce it to kids in.
Yes.
So, we know we're giving kids this formula that doesn't make sense to them and doesn't mean anything, when actually you can visualize it, and maybe a little bit longer to visualize it, but you get what's happening and why.
Yeah.
I must also say, I love that you can ish division of fractions.
Yes.
And
let's do that.
will also help with understanding and, help with kids not getting lost into this procedural maze of numbers. I thought it was interesting, this middle school classroom that I was mentioning of Kathy Humphries, when they were given 1 divided by 2/3, half the class thought the answer was 6.
6. Did they just multiply the numerator and denominator?
I think so. But
okay.
It's, interesting. That is what, if you just teach kids procedures, that's what they'll do. They'll do things like that. Oh, I have to times this by this, and doesn't make any sense. So when they started to process it visually, the kids were saying things like, oh, I see, the 2/3 fits inside it one time and then half of a time. So yeah, I think we have to go that sort of extra little pace and let kids visualize and help them see what's happening in maths.
Well, after reading that excerpt in this book, I'm putting this on my list of things to do with teachers this year, is because what happened this past year is I walked into a classroom and the kids already knew the flip and multiply. They were actually 5th graders. And so to undo that was, and the 2 or 3 visits that I had to that classroom was really not happening. But so I'm looking at the curriculum guide and saying, okay, a month or 2 months before we even get to division of fractions, which we're going to have some.
Or if kids
deep
already know flip and multiply, what I would ask them is, why does that work? And they probably won't come up with much for that. But can you give me a visual proof? I know you know how to flip and multiply, but I'd like you to make a visual proof for me.
Yeah, I love that, because especially when I was teaching, I taught middle school for a lot of years, and I would say to the students, I'm not interested in the answer. I'm interested in how you're thinking about, or how you can see it, right? And that this is going back 2000. Well, my daughter was born in 2006, so this was 2000. The early 2000s, right? This is this is not new thinking, right? We've been trying to get students to think this way for many decades.
I have just gone through a process at Stanford of clearing out my office because we're moving to a new building, and it made me so sad because I started going through all these books and things I was working on and things people wrote in the 80s, and I just thought, oh my gosh, we have been banging this drum for so long, and how far have we got in really getting people to engage conceptually with maths? I mean, there's been improvement, but we've got a long way to go still.
We do have a long way to go. That there's no doubt about that. And that brings me to maybe my sort of ending questions. Even though I could talk to you all day about your work and this book, and I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I'm sure I missed something. Okay.
I am going to tell you what mathematical diversity is.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned that.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. Let's do it.
Mathematical diversity, I use that term to explain the maths we should be valuing, which is all mathematical diversity is all the different ways people see it, all the different ways people think about it, all the different ways people can explain it, that it's a valuing of that diversity. That's one of the problems of maths education that we've had for so long. It's just been about one way to do it and one method, and if you don't use the teacher's method, you're done for. So yeah, mathematical diversity is the opposite of that. It's valuing all the beauty of different ways, different approaches, different visuals.
I love it. That's fantastic, because sometimes people hear the word diversity and it can be very, leading in a certain way.
Well, these days.
Yes, it could be
become...
a hot topic. Let's just put it that way. But I love the idea that you talk about mathematical diversity is all the different ways to think about it. And also, just a quick side note, I don't know if my son is listening, but I have a son going into junior year in high school, and he has some Algebra 2 work and pre-calc work to do over the summer. So I had promised his teacher that I would sit with him and do some things, and we've tried once, and we'll get there. But the point I'm trying to make,
your own children.
No, and exactly. And I said to him, I sat him down and I said, okay, we're going to start with just domain and range, right? Let's just review what domain and range are. But rather than me teaching it to him and saying, this is domain, this is range, I gave him Desmos to play around with it. And he was so aggravated with me because he said, just show me.
Just tell me
how to do it. Just tell me what it is. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be a long summer, right. You know. But he did. He asked for, is there a YouTube video I could watch about this? I'm like, okay, now I see, right? I see where we are with this.
I have 2 daughters, and one was totally open to me helping, and we got quite far with maths, and the other was like, never will I have a moment of help from my parents. Yes. So...
it is what it is.
Yeah.
I was trying to lean into the being comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it just wasn't working. So we switched gears and went out for ice cream instead.
Also good.
We'll go back to it. But all right. So I want to wrap this conversation up with 2 questions that I'm starting to ask the guests that come here. So I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with maybe you are, maybe you're not, Brene Brown. I'm a huge Brene Brown lover.
Me too, love her.
And she talks about hope. And I have her, it's not on my shelf, but she has a book called The Atlas of the Heart. And she talks about all these different emotions in this book. So she talks about hope. And so my question is, we can get very frustrated. I'm right with you with the 1989, I think, was the first Principles and Standards from NCTM.
NCTM.
I mean, 1989, I was actually in college and thinking, this is amazing. I never thought I was going to be a math teacher. My father thought I should be an actuary. And then I was like, that's boring. And he's like, but you'll make a ton of money. And I'm like, it's boring. And so I went to a methods class one day it was like a one-off seminar class where we got to go into classrooms and see students learn math. And the teachers were being trained at that time with the principles and standards. So yes, we can get very frustrated and be like, oh my gosh, how can I still walk into a classroom and see people not on board, right? But I also think there's hope, right? So my question to you is, with so much to wrestle with in math education today, what gives you hope, Jo Boaler?
What gives me hope? Well, recently I was involved in a pretty hairy traumatic period of being a writer for the California Maths Framework, and torn apart in social media as people are, but it passed, and the framework is now in place in California, and it's all about giving kids rich tasks, sharing mindset messages, making maths visual. So that gives me a lot of hope. I know that people across California are working to bring that maths to kids, and caused me a lot of personal damage, but it's been a really nice, and very hopeful. And I do see a lot of teachers now doing really amazing things and listening to kids' strategies and encouraging them to fail and make mistakes, and so that always gives me hope. Teachers always give me hope. If I really get beaten up, I go out and spend time with teachers. And
yes, 100%. Stay off social media.
Look at my puppy. He's asleep.
Look at this puppy. Is he really asleep? Oh, he's adorable.
Asleep.
His name is Bentley. Yeah? Bentley is the
Bentley,
puppy.
everyone, he's 14 weeks old.
He's 14 weeks. I love it. My dogs have been incredibly quiet. When I had told my teenagers, keep them quiet. This is a very important podcast episode. And I think the heat, I'm in New Jersey, and it's so hot here right now. The heat is just knocking them right out.
They've been very good, yes.
The dog days, yeah.
Knocked out.
Yeah. Okay, so my second question to wrap this episode up is, if you could give advice to a teacher as they're stepping into their classroom, like they're thinking, we're recording this it's almost August, right? So they're starting to think. I know there are some teachers who are still checked out, which they should be, getting their rest and everything.
Yes.
That I hope they are. This is why I haven't really put out any episodes this summer, because I wanted people to rest. And the question is, they're mid-August, they're going to start thinking, okay, I got to start my year. What advice would you give to a teacher about what would you want every teacher to carry into their classroom when it comes to math?
Say that to teachers that their students' thinking is their greatest resource, and they can ask their students, what do you think about this? And do you have another way? Does anybody have a different way of thinking about it? Can anybody think about a visual way of thinking about it? Just, putting the demand on the kids. How do you think about it? How would you visualize it? We'll get them so far. Kids get really interested, and I've worked with teachers who've, been a stand at the board and lecture for their whole career. And one of them told me, one day I just turned around and I asked the class, what do you think? And does anybody think about it differently? And she said, it just changed me forever. I never went back after that. It was so great. The kids were all sharing ideas and we were making connections between them. And so if you have textbooks given to you by your district of endless short questions that aren't inspiring for kids, just throw 2/3 of them away and have kids go into the more interesting ones and discuss with each other what they would do and what their methods are, and generate that rich classroom culture of student thinking, and you'll be good.
Awesome. I love two things you said there. The first thing was to put the demand on the students, right? Is give the students more to think about, because they want that. Believe it or not. I know they don't act like they want that, especially if you teach middle school or high school, but they really do. They really do.
And even if they've never been asked that before, and so they don't quickly share, you can change that within a few days. We bring kids in a lot, middle school kids who never shared their thinking, and within a few days of realizing it's a safe space and they're not going to get shot down and they don't have to be correct, they start sharing their thinking, and it's so amazing for teachers.
Game changer. Yeah. I was laughing about the textbook because my very first episode of this podcast, I talk about my experience as an 8th grade math teacher. I had kids who did not, had never been asked that question, had never been asked, what do you think? After about a month of trying to get them to learn from the district approved textbook. I was a brand new teacher in that district. I already had teaching experience, but I was, so I was trying to do the thing that the administrators were expecting. I went in one day and I took all the textbooks away. We're done with these. And it wasn't that I didn't think they could do the work. It was that they weren't connecting with the work in the books.
Yeah.
So I just extracted what I thought was good, and I made my own.
It's a really interesting idea. What if we were to get rid of all the textbooks? What would happen? Would achievement go right up? I feel like.
Well, it did in that case. It did in that case. So
I think it would.
I don't know. On to the next adventure, right?
Yeah.
On to the next adventure. Well, I am a huge supporter of you. I so appreciate everything that you have done for math education.
Thank you.
I really mean that from the bottom of my heart, because you have inspired.
I really appreciate that.
Other people. You've inspired other people to get out. You've inspired me as a teacher. You inspired the teachers that I work with, that even the administrators, other coaches that I've worked with, to say, yeah, maybe if we thought about it a different way and just ask kids, what do you think? So thank you. And thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for bringing Bentley on.
Thank you, Bentley, for being such a good boy this whole time. Yes. He's so cute. All right, I'm just going to stop recording. I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and follow along on the conversation on Instagram. And remember, being a math person is all just a matter of perspective.